Next, we will discuss about object-oriented programming concepts. So, object-oriented programming. What are the concepts we have in object-oriented programming? We will discuss about all those now. So, object-oriented programming is nothing but OOPS concepts. Our object-oriented programming is a methodology or a technique. Our object-oriented program is a methodology or a technique. This object-oriented programming will provide some set of suggestions to us to create a real-world object in our programming world by achieving some security and dynamic binding. First, I will make a note about this, then we will see clearly. Object-oriented programming, OOP, is a methodology or a technique. It provides set of suggestions to create real world object in programming world by achieving security and dynamic binding. So this point just now we have discussed. Our OOPS is a methodology, or you can call it as a technique. What this object OOP is doing, it provides some set of suggestions to us. What suggestions it will provide means, it will tell you how to create a real world object in our programming world by achieving security and dynamic binding. We will see one by one. First, we will discuss about a real world object. What is an object first? First of all, I will explain to you. First, we will discuss about what is a object. So what is an object? A real world thing, whatever you are seeing, like for example a person or a vehicle, either it is bike or car or bus or any electronic device, mobile or SIM card or any like any object like a person or a vehicle, any electronic device, all those comes under a object. It is a real world object. So by using programming, whatever the operations this real world object is doing, those operations we have to perform from computer. For that reason, object oriented program is given some suggestions to create real world object in our programming world. First, I will make a note about this. A real world thing which we can see and use is called a object. Examples we have seen, What are the examples? A person or a vehicle or a electronic device. All real world things comes under objects. What this OOP is doing? OOP is giving some suggestions to develop a program for doing some business operations from computer. And why should we create object in our programming world? Why should we create object in programming world? What is the reason why we should create object in our programming world? Because we develop project, whatever the project we are developing by using programming languages, we develop those projects to perform some real world business operations by a computer. For example, we'll take a bank. Bank will be having some operations like withdraw, deposit, whatever the operations you are doing by going to bank. You want to do all those operations from your computer. For that, what you have to do? You have to develop a web application by using any programming language. For that reason, we have our object-oriented programming concepts. In object-oriented programming concepts, we can create a real-world object in our programming world. This bank is a real-world object. Bank object you have to create in your programming world to perform some business operations from your computer. First, I will make a note about this. We develop project to perform a real world business operations by a computer. Performing operations in a business is nothing but performing operations for an object, because business contains object. And example we have taken as bank. Example, consider bank business. So when we consider example as bank business, this bank is a real world object. So by using this bank, whatever the operations this bank is performing in real world, bank what operations bank will perform in real world? We have, by going to bank we will withdraw money and we will deposit money and we will check balance. Whatever the operations you are doing by going to bank, all those operations you can do from your computer by creating a project. That inside that project, by using any programming language and by using object oriented programming concepts, we can develop a project. Inside project, by using object we can perform that object related operations. Operations is nothing but business operations. Business operations are the business logic which we write in our methods in our Java class. Withdraw or deposit. We can write those methods logic in our class, in our bank class. Then that operations are nothing but object related, our bank object related operations. We perform deposit, withdraw, operations for a customer. Here customer is a object. So hence to develop a project using object oriented programming, we must create a real world object in our programming world. So we perform deposit withdraw operations for a customer. Here customer is an object. Hence to develop a project using object oriented programming, we must create a real world object in our programming world. So what is the main purpose of our object oriented programming? Till now we have discussed in object oriented programming, we develop our programs around an object. Here bank is an object. Around this bank object, we will develop programs. Inside programs, what we will be having? Classes will be having. For example, I have a bank class. Inside a bank class, we will be having some operations. What are those operations? Those operations are nothing but business operations which will be done by bank in our real world. In real world, what bank will be having some operations? Withdraw, deposit, all those comes under operations. Those operations in our programming world, in our Java class, class bank, inside that class, we will write methods. Inside that methods, we will write our business logic. Whatever withdraw or deposit, all those logic we will write in our Java methods. I will make a note about this. In object oriented programming, we develop programs around an object and its data. But not around operations directly. Why? In object-oriented programming, we develop programs around an object and its data, but not around operations directly. Why? Because whatever the program we are writing, we have to question ourselves for which object, what that operation is doing, business operations. Then we have to think and we will write a program. For example, when we think about our bank is a real world object. So if you want to convert that real world object into programming world, so by using object, then you will think about bank as a object. Then you will create a class object. Object is nothing but class bank. After creating class bank, then you will write some business operations what that bank will perform. Withdraw or deposit or bank balance checking, whatever the operations those object will perform, you will write those operations in your methods. That means based on the object you are developing your programs, but not around the operations directly. Where you will develop operations directly in your procedural oriented programming. Procedural oriented programming is nothing but we have example C language. C language is a procedural oriented programming language. There you will develop operations directly because there we don't have any objects. C is not an object oriented programming. But when it comes to Java, in Java everything will be done through object. So whenever we are writing a program, we will think for which object we are writing program, what that object is doing in real world business operations, then we have to write logic related to that. But in C language we will write operations directly because C language is not a object oriented programming. First I will make a note about this. In C language we develop program around an operations. It means when we develop a program in object oriented programming, we must ask ourselves a question: for which object we are developing this program? For which object we must develop program? But when it comes to POP is nothing but procedural oriented programming. Procedural oriented programming. We must ask a question: for which operation and using which formula we must develop a program. This is the point just now we have discussed. So based on these points, we conclude that we have difference in our program development. Whatever the program you are writing, there will be some difference. Like in C language, you will write a program, but there you will not be having classes or business related operations of any object. But when you develop a Java program, Java is an object oriented programming language. That means in Java, whenever you are writing a program, first you have to question yourself for which object we are writing a program. For example, we have a bank object. For bank object, you have to write a class and you have to write a methods. Methods is nothing but a business operations which is done by bank object. So first, after seeing that bank object, you have to create class bank. Then you have to think about writing methods. What are those methods? Methods is nothing but business operations done by bank objects. Those business operations are nothing but deposit, withdraw, check balance. All those are operations. Then you have to write all those methods in your class. This is how we can develop programs in your Java, and this is the difference between programming, program development. I will make a note about this. Based on above points, we conclude we have difference in program development. Structures in procedural oriented programming and object oriented programming. In procedural oriented programming language, for example, we will take C language. There we will develop program directly start with function, because in C language we don't have any classes and objects, because procedural oriented programming is meant for the clubbing programs. It is meant for the clubbing programs around operations. Whereas in object-oriented programming languages, we develop program starts with class. Only inside class we are allowed to place variables and functions, because object-oriented programming is meant for storing value and implementing operations for a particular object. So you got my point. What is difference between procedural oriented programming and object oriented programming? Why we have object oriented programming in Java? You got some points. So I will show you the difference in program. I will write programs, simple programs. Then we will see the difference between C language program and Java language program. Void add this is my add function. Int a is equal to sum 10, int b is equal to 20, int c is equal to a plus b, printf %d c. What we are doing here is, this is my C program. In C program we don't have any classes or objects. We will be having functions, operations or functions directly. This is my addition.c class. Sorry, addition.c program. This is how C program looks like. Next we will develop Java program with same logic. How you will create Java program? First you have to create class. Like when you think about creating addition class, addition is an object. What this addition object will do? Adding the numbers. Then you have to create class for this addition object. Class addition. This addition class will have some operations. Those operations are nothing but methods. Void add. Inside this add, I will write int a is equal to sum 10, int b is equal to 20. Then int c is equal to a plus b. System.out.println %d. This is how you will develop Java class for addition object. This is addition.java. So you are seeing the difference, right? In addition.c, in C program, we are writing add operation directly because we don't have any class or any objects in our C language. But when you create the same program in your Java, how you will create same program in Java? First, when you create program in Java, you have to think about object. Which object? Then addition object. You have to think about what operations this object is doing. Addition object, what it will do? It will add numbers. Then that adding numbers is an operation done by addition object. Then you have to create class addition. Inside addition class, you have to write the operation as a method. Void add, inside that you have int a and int b, and you are adding that in your C variable. Then you are printing that C variable. This is the difference between C program and a Java program. Function placed directly in a file. in Java, function placed inside a class. This is the difference in program. So next we will see